Welcome to the Igniting the CEO Within podcast, where we interview successful high-level professionals to discover lessons they've learned throughout their career that can help ignite that CEO within you. I'm Mark McFatridge, and I'm usually your host for the next 15 minutes or so, but not today. Today, Tim Molek, founder and executive coach at Molek Leadership Exchange and previous guest on Igniting the CEO Within, will be flipping the script on me and leading our discussion today. Tim, I have no idea what you've got up your sleeve, but man, I'm ready.
All right, Mark. Hey, I really appreciate you taking this opportunity and allowing me to take you through the Igniting the CEO process. It was really an enjoyable experience for me. And when I look at the experiences that you've had, it would be a shame if you didn't have the opportunity to do the same.
Awesome. Thanks so much. I'm excited.
Yeah. So, um, when I look at your career, you have an amazing career. You worked for the man or the woman for a certain period of time, and then you
Yeah.
moved into more of an entrepreneurial role. Which is, I think, a fascinating transition because it's hard for some people to do both. You either have a tendency to like to work within a structure, or you have this
Mhm.
tendency to be like, I want to be out on my own, and you figure out a way to transition through those too. So when you think back through all those years, who are some of the most influential leaders you either worked for or saw within your environment, or even now have interviewed through your podcast that you feel like, you know what, they really have something that I can learn from and that I should take care of forward. So who are those leaders, and what are some of the things that you've taken forward and kind of incorporated in your leadership style?
Yeah, that's first of all, a great observation. And I want to hit on that just a little bit. One of the things that I find interesting about my career is, and that I would never trade is I loved originally starting out working, for the man or for large corporate, really, because of the training and the opportunities and the exposure that you get to a variety of different things. Not only in my case, banking, not only, types of deals and different industries and all that, but different types of leaders. And you just get this amazing exposure to it. And then, but then for me, it became a little bit of challenging of, I'm not a real rigid person, and I want to do what's right, and not just because that's what the map says or the program says. And then, the other thing for me is I got exposure as a banker to so many entrepreneurs that I'm like, man, I wish I had the guts to do that, right? And I didn't. I felt comfortable in large corporate. I felt comfortable being a hired gun, but I kept watching these people. I'm like, man, it seems like they're having a lot of fun. And I, you know, I, I don't mean to demean anybody, but they're no smarter than I am. They just have had the guts to do it and stuck it out and went and did it. So anyway, that's kind of that transition. So finally got to that point in my life where I'm like, I can do this. Let's go. If I think back, man, I've been blessed my entire life, and not just on the business side of things. I had, basically was raised by a single mom, so she was a great influence on me. She remarried when I was 12, and the gentleman she married, Larry Dunn, was just a huge, impactful person in my life. He taught me everything. Not certainly from a business standpoint, he general manager of some factories back in Logansport, Indiana, and grew and all that. So I got to see how he built relationships with everybody from the janitor on the factory floor to Japanese executives that came in to negotiate deals. So, really early on in my life, I got to see really cool leaders. And then um, early in my banking career, I had the opportunity to work for a gentleman by the name of Steve Shank, here in Indianapolis. He's a banking legend, frankly, and I got to be his chief administrative officer and chief financial officer for the Midwest region of what was then Union Planters Bank, and then ultimately Regions Bank. And I remember I was having some trouble working with Steve. He's a huge idea guy. He would come in on the weekend and just have 30 new ideas. And I was like, okay, I've got to execute on all of them. And I got some guidance from somebody who had worked with Steve for a long time, who said, hey, look, here's how you work with Steve. The first time he mentions something, you kind of write it down and nod. The second time you take it a little bit more seriously, but the third time he says it, he really means that you need to do that. And it made all the difference. that person also said, I think, you're at that stage where you need an executive coach. Well, I think you should go talk to Steve about that. And I walked into Steve's office. I go, hey, I've been thinking, I think I'd like to have an executive coach. He goes, no, that's bullshit. He goes, just follow me around and do what I do. So, and it ended up being really good advice, though odd. But so, those are some real impactful early on career folks. And then, honestly, Tim, one of the things that I do routinely is every conversation I have, I listen intently and try to take something away from all of it. And I call it pocketing experiences. And so, I'll watch somebody and how they interact with people or how they face a different challenge or opportunity. And I'm like, okay, that's cool. I'm going to put that in my right pocket. Or I see something of how they screw something up and I'm like, oh, I better put that in the left pocket so I don't do that one. So, again, certainly I've been blessed and to try to even name all of them, we can't do it. But just those were a few names that immediately come out. But for me, it's just the blessed with the people that have been in my life that I've been able to watch and learn from, and call mentors that they'd never say that they were my formal mentor or anything like that. So yeah, thanks for that opportunity to shout out some people.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love the way you answered that because I think my experience, I find a lot of successful executives um, have some people have horrible experiences, but a lot of times it really depends on how you look at it. It's either like, oh man, this is against me again, or other people look at it and say, this is the opportunity for me, right? How do I turn this and how do I learn from this to say that's not what I want to do going forward?
Mhm.
But here are the positive things that I take from that experience, and that's what I build on. As I said, some people have really challenging circumstances, so that's much easier said than done. But I think the successful ones always figure out how to take something that's a challenge and find the opportunity in it.
What's funny is I am not a good history person. I never liked it in school. I never just it was not something that resonated with me. And oddly, I think that's carried over to, one of the characteristics that I think is a strong suit for me is I use the phrase always forward. And so it's almost irrelevant how we got to where we are. It's, yeah, okay, something happened. Cool. We still have a goal. Let's go get it. And it's always moving forward. So, I don't spend a whole lot of time of figuring out what went wrong that put us in this situation. All my energies go towards moving forward. And I think that ties a lot into what you just described.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, case in point for you is he said, you don't need a executive coach. Some people would say, oh man, this guy derailed my career because he wouldn't let me get an executive coach. And he said, okay, I'm going to take what I can out of this experience and make it positive.
Yeah, yeah, for
Yeah,
sure. He's still around. He's just a great leader and great friend and amazing mentor.
that is cool. So making that transition from the man to entrepreneurship, what is some advice you might give someone if they're considering that move?
Yeah, I think you've got to figure out the intersection of I don't want to say passion because I don't know if that's necessarily fair, but I think if you take a step back and you start to look at the intersection of things that you really enjoy, that you're good at, that's a pretty darn good place to start. And if you could start to figure out what that looks like and develop something, whether you're doing it from scratch or you're making an acquisition to get into that, I think that's a heck of a good place to start. So, what's something that you're good at and that you enjoy doing, and focus there. And I think it's just start, right? Again, it's almost that always forward perspective of, look, if you feel confident, if you have the means to go out and do it, do it. Like, don't wait. There's no time like the present to do it. And I probably waited a heck of a lot longer than I should have because I didn't take that my own advice. But yeah, to me, it's figure out what you're good at and what you really like to do, and then figure out what that looks like from an opportunity standpoint, and create it, and then go.
Yeah,
To me, that's that again, moving forward, right? Always forward movement.
I love that. Always forward moving. That's great advice. So the Olympics, you and I chatted before we started.
Mhm.
A lot of sports going on. The Olympics are happening. which is always quite an interesting time. And when you look back in your career, athletics played an important part. You played
Yeah.
varsity baseball in college. Um, that definitely had helped guide you in some way, shape, or form over the years, whether either as a participant or as someone who now watches. What would you say over the years are some of the things you've learned from either playing sports or watching sports that you incorporate into your business life?
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. Well, first of all, playing varsity baseball at Butler, I would say I was the best bullpen catcher they've ever had. That's where I peaked was in the bullpen. But yeah, no, you're right. One of the things that's really interesting is I only played team sports, and so as I reflect on your question on that, I think that played a huge role for me. So a handful of things. First of all, it's the team success is what everything is about, and I think you can, if you followed my career or we had the opportunity to work together, you would always see that it was about the team first and never about me and my success. As a matter of fact, I would deflect it as much as possible to say, look, we don't have, my title may be CEO, but it doesn't matter. We are all here together, and it's the good of the team that's going to raise us all. So I think, playing team sports was super important for me growing up. I think the other thing, yeah, I was fortunate. I grew up in a pretty small town in Logansport, Indiana, and had the opportunity to, and this is going to age me, to play the three sports. Right? I mean, there's a ton
Hmm.
more, but I played baseball, basketball, and
Hmm.
football. I mean, really until I was a freshman through my freshman year in high school. And then you realize that a 5'9" power forward doesn't really excel. And so I gave up basketball. But what was interesting is in all three of those sports, I played different roles. So I was a very good baseball player. I was a really good catcher, frankly. And so in that place, I was, not only a pretty good player, but also became a leader on that team. In football, I was decent, but and was team captain and that type of stuff, and but played a much lesser role from a talent standpoint. And then in basketball, I was a complete role player, and so I knew what my role was. I was, I could set a heck of a pick, and box out like crazy, but I was not the best player on the team. I was not a leader on that team. So what that taught me is going from sport to sport is to understand what your role is and figure out what's best for the organization and play that to its best. And I think that's a pretty good um, characteristic to bring forward into business, and especially as I'm learning now from an entrepreneurial standpoint, is the best thing you can do is figure out what role you play that best suits the organization and get
Hmm.
there sooner, right?
Hmm.
And so
Yeah.
many founders try to do everything. They want to touch every check, they want to hire every employee,
Hmm.
they want to all these things, and that's fine, and I get it, but that's not how you're going to scale. That's not how you're going to become an excellent organization, is if you have your hands on everything. You've got to figure out what the best role is for you and get to that. And so, yeah, thanks for bringing me back to that, my glory days. Right, we're going to sing Bruce Springsteen here in a minute, but no, that was awesome. Yeah, so yeah, I think those are pretty big takeaways for me in growing up playing sports.
Yeah, those are great insights. And also, I mean, sports is what we're focusing on. That was your experience. But I know I always would tell my kids too, it's not just about sports. It could be band, it could be the radio
Yeah.
station. I mean, there's so many things you can join it. Even if you're in an individual sport, you're still part of a bigger group.
Mhm.
Um, and so I think there's so much to take out of just this whole team concept as you go on. Now, it's kind of funny. You said you gave up basketball, and a year ago, I would have said in the state of Indiana, that's got to be a crime. But after this last year, now you got some street cred as a football player now in Indiana, right?
It is, yeah, yeah. No, seriously, I didn't stop playing it in the streets or in the alleys, but yeah, but yeah, for sure. It's that IU story is another
Oh, it's
just
amazing.
amazing story of how important a coach and a leader is, and the mentality and drive to make things happen. And watching them go from literally, I believe this is true. The the most number of losses of any whatever Big Five, Power Five program in the history of college football to, 2 years with the new coach and you're in the national championship and winning the national championship is an amazing testament to leadership and somebody having a vision and being able to communicate it and let everybody know what the rules are and accepting no less than excellence.
Yeah, absolutely. You're right. There's a lot to learn from that story, and it also ties to my next question, which is interesting. It's about humble confidence. I listened to one of your igniting the CEO from within, and I believe it was with Tracy Bednar, and she talked about this idea of humble confidence
Hmm.
versus self-importance. And I think Indiana and the quarterback. I mean, and you're like, I'm a backup catcher. The best backup catcher they had, but you made it to that pyramid. The pyramid is so steep in sports from like grade school to high school to college to even get to that point is pretty successful. So I hope and I know you're proud of that. Um, but I have a question about the podcast start igniting the CEO within podcast. What compelled you to do that? Why did you start it?
I so it's funny, and I appreciate the question. I never wanted to have a podcast, never. Like it was, I'm anti that, right? Like I kept saying, what am I going to offer, right? Like that's not already out there that you couldn't do it, and so it started. I've got a great chief of staff. Her name Tiffany O'Connell. She's just amazing, and she's like, you got to do a podcast. I'm like, same thing. I can't. I don't know why. And she's like,
Mm.
okay, how about if we start to highlight the stories of people that are in the Quade community? And I'm like, that I can get behind. And so it just started as this. I'm going to interview our allies and our circle directors and, some of our strategic partners and that kind of stuff. And then it's like, man, these are amazing stories that you get to hear their origin stories and how they came up with this and what their ideas are on leadership. And it's just it became this obsession almost. And so now we seek out leaders all over, and certainly we want them to become part of the Quake community. But there's so many great leaders out there from all walks of life, from all types of industries, from all revenue size companies and all the stuff that God, it seems criminal to not highlight those. So yeah, so it's been a blast. I've met so many new people, and I as you've probably figured out, I'm not a big script guy.
Yeah,
So just what I believe happens is they become these genuine, authentic conversations that I don't know where they're going to go when we start, and yet they always seem to work out pretty good. And I'm really proud of the work that we're doing and the people that we get to highlight and all that kind of stuff.
absolutely. So I recommend those that listen to this probably already know you, but they should be following Igniting the CEO from Within as well as Quade. And it's my last question, because I know we're pushing up on time, because I do follow Igniting the CEO Within, and you just posted something today, which was a quote, which is the best way to predict the future is to create it, which I love. I love that quote. And over the course of my leadership, I always find that I always liked using quotes that fit the moment, or even a lot of times found lyrics in songs. Like for me, an example of one that I used quite often was there are actually two lyrics within the Eagles song Already Gone.
Hmm.
The first one is, so oftentimes it happens that we live our life in chains that we never even know we have the key, which I think is fantastic, especially when you're discussing executive coaching. And the other is, so often, remember this, my girl, you could look up in the sky and you could still see the stars, but still not see the light. And I always think
Hmm.
that's a great one too about getting caught up in so many other
Yeah.
things. So you posted this quote today. Are there any other favorite authors or lyrics or quotes that you like to use in your experience?
Yeah. I mean, we pull them out all the time, right? And figure those out. But there's one specific song that I love that's been really impactful on me to when I go back and reflect just on my life and my career. And it's a Kenny Chesney song. It's called "The Life." And
Mm-hmm.
if you know it,
Mm-hmm.
it's about a business guy who's on vacation in Mexico, and he comes across a fisherman who's selling fish, and the main character is kind of big dogging him, right, and saying stuff about, I can bottle a fish, and the guy's like, yeah, you know what, I've got a pretty good life. I get to fish, I get to drink beer with my friends, I get to go home to my wife and do it all over again. And it it's pretty cool as I reflect back over my life, is I've actually played both of those roles, right? Like I was, thinking, working for the man, working for corporate, that I was the big dog, and now I'm doing exactly what I love to do, and that's now I've flipped the script. I'm the fisherman, right? And I live a really good life. I get to meet all kinds of really cool people and talk about stuff that I enjoy talking about, and so yeah, not that's probably not exactly what you were looking for, but that
No,
song
no,
has been really impactful for me, and I go back to it all the time.
no, that's perfect. It's wherever you find the inspiration. I think that's a great story too. Yeah. So, I encourage everyone listening to this, make sure that they're following Igniting the CEO Within, and they're following Quade, and they're following you, because as you've discussed today, and even if you listen to your previous podcasts, you share a lot of insights that are really helpful and impactful. And getting to know you and working with you, I think, is really important. It's been for me. It's helped me quite a bit, and I think it'll help others as well. So with that, I will turn it over to you. And again, thank you for letting me flip the table on you today.
Tim, this is a blast. Thank you. It's fun. I've like you, I've been able to be on a bunch of podcasts, and just yeah, I always forget. Or maybe I just don't take advantage, or don't smell the roses along the way, right? Of, man, I've done some shit,
Hmm.
and to be able to just share some of it with people, and hopefully some of it sticks, and all that kind of stuff. So this has been a blast. Thank you. I don't know if you've got a podcast, but you need to start thinking into one, because you're really good at it. So
Maybe it'll convince me. Yeah.
there you go. All right, y'all. Thank you to Tim for taking the time to do this. I do want to remind you that Igniting the CEO Within is sponsored by Quade, which is a nationwide community of CEOs and entrepreneurs. Quade has created Launchpad, which provides an opportunity for executive coaches to become licensed circle directors and earn significant annual recurring revenues. To find out more, visit quadecircle.com. Until next time, keep igniting that CEO within you. I'm Mark McFatridge, and that's Tim Molek. We've had a blast. Thanks for hanging out with us.